When's the easiest time to make a sale? Right after you made a last one. Why? Because you're in a good mood, you're acting non-needy, you're operating from a place of abundance, and you're feeling good, you're feeling confident, you're feeling capable. If you want to feel confident, capable, and in a good mood, then you need to make sure you are not allowing all of the aspects of life, your view of those events in life, to push you into the opposite direction. Welcome, everyone, to the Close More Sales podcast. Today, we are focusing on a transformative concept that's reshaped my personal and professional life, and that is the Stoic principle of ascent. I'll start this episode with a quote from Marcus Aurelius, and that is, if you are pained by an external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it, and it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now. This idea deeply resonates with me because it aligns perfectly with how I approach challenges and interactions, sales interactions. This life, whether we are in a sales conversation or literally any of the rest of the time, is all about controlling our reactions, not the events themselves, but how we choose to see and respond to them. In this episode, we will explore mastering ascent and how it can dramatically enhance your sales interactions and personal growth. I'll share how this principle has helped me stay composed under pressure, make better decisions, and maintain a positive outlook regardless of the circumstances. By the end of our discussion, you'll have practical insights into applying this wisdom, this Stoic wisdom, to turn everyday obstacles into opportunities for success, for self-improvement, for more sales. Let's get started, and we will uncover how you can start implementing this powerful approach in your own life. So what's the purpose of this show anyway? Like, why listen to it? What's it all about? The purpose of this show is to empower sales professionals and entrepreneurs to push themselves to grow, achieve unimaginable success without burning out, and ultimately transform their lives. I'm Ian Ross, and I am obsessed with all things sales, and I work with teams across the English-speaking world to make more money by asking better questions. The most proven path to achieving financial freedom is maximizing your earning potential. And a sales role is the lowest barrier with the highest possible ceiling for entry onto that path. And anyone can become a killer salesperson with the right techniques, mindset, and consistency. Everything we cover on this podcast is geared towards one thing: helping you close more sales so you can live the life you want. If you would like to get a sheet breaking down all the things we say on a follow-up call, text follow up, that's 2 words, to 33777, and we'll send you a template of what to say on the phone completely for free. So let's get into this now. The essence of ascent. What is ascent, right? What am I even talking about? Ascent, simply put, is in giving your assent to something, you are agreeing with it or not. So I'm going to dive into this in some pretty profound detail. And what was also not said in the intro is this is actually probably one of the most important and hopefully impactful episodes I will ever record of this podcast, because it is directly relatable towards what every single person has to deal with every single day, whether you are in sales or not. This is how to think about what is happening to you in life. And that relates on a extreme level to the sales professional, because a lot of what sales professionals do is life amplified. We've got more rejection, we've got more challenges, we've got more interactions than most people. And so as a result, having a level of resiliency and the ability to examine what's happening to you to determine if it's good or if it's bad genuinely it's just so incredible. In fact, I would argue it's basically a superpower to carry you through life. And it matters more for sales professionals than even your everyday person, right? So if you are in a sales role in any way, shape, or form, pay attention, because chances are you're not applying this intensely to what you're doing. Even if you like stoicism, you're probably not applying it. So let's get into it here. There is this underlying principle with which I live my life, and it's a very Stoic principle, which is that everything we are going through is an impression, meaning events happen separate from us. An event is an objective occurrence in the world. And it is neither good nor bad. It is our impressions of that event that determine in our mind whether it's good or bad, which means we have the ability to determine if an event is going to be considered good for us or bad for us. That's sort of the basic underlying consent here. And the idea with giving assent to something is you get an impression of something happening and you can assent to that impression. Meaning, if I see that it's going to rain outside, I can determine, I have control over this because the rain is neutral. I can determine if this is a good thing or a bad thing. So that is a basic example. Some people might love the rain. Maybe they're farmers and there hasn't been enough rain. Maybe they just like rainy days. Maybe they weren't going to go outside. Maybe they wanted to rest and they wanted to hear some noise that would help them sleep. Other people maybe were planning a day out, are just highly influenced by the rain. It makes them sad and they don't want to be sad. The whole point of this is it's an impression that determines whether the rain is good or bad. Okay? To apply this to a little more of a dramatic circumstance, because hopefully most of you can understand that concept, that rain is objectively neutral. The event itself is objectively neutral. And then our impression of it is what determines whether it's good or bad. How we could extrapolate out from that same example, just rain. Let's say it's your wedding day and you are going to be scheduled to have that ceremony on the beach and then it rains. Well, now traditionally we would say that's a bad thing because it disrupted our plans. But I can determine maybe I have a terrible sunburn and being out in the sun anymore would hurt me even more. So I'm relieved that it's raining. Maybe the beach thing where there's going to be an extra charge that was then going to put the couple into debt that would then take years to pay off, right? Like there are all these aspects of the event happens. And by default, most people just go, that's a good thing, that's a bad thing, rather than actually examining the impression and then giving assent to that impression. Meaning I agree that my initial impression that this is a bad thing is a bad thing. Or I can determine, actually, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I can determine if it is or if it isn't. That's what assent is. This is way more than simply controlling reactions. Because to do this effectively requires evaluating whether our reactions align with reality, with our values, with things that actually serve us. So by assessing our responses, not just before acting, but before even determining how we should feel before reacting, it enhances our decision-making, especially in high-pressure environments, as well as just makes life a little bit less stressful because I have control over whether this event that happened to me gets to be viewed as good or bad. So it's so powerful if you can embrace this. And we're going to dive into it a little bit more here in regards to an impression happens. I get to determine how I want to view that impression. What do I want to give assent to? Do I want to determine that this is a good thing or a bad thing? So let's get into talking about sort of assent and action here, either through both a personal and professional impact kind of thing. What is really key here is to make sure you are thinking about whether or not your view of an event serves you or hinders you. This is the most important thing and how it affects me most consistently. I don't automatically assume that my reaction to an event serves me. The way I do that is by examining my impression to determine if I want to give my assent to it, if I agree with that impression. And I will give, again, a basic life example outside of sales. We will get into sales examples coming up. But this is really key because this helps me stay even-keeled. It helps me stay pleasant, stay happy. And when I'm even-keeled, pleasant, and happy and keeping in a positive mood because I chose to be in a positive mood, guess what also happens? I'm more effective at my job as a sales professional, right? The underlying principle here is that when's the easiest time to make a sale? Right after you made a last one. Why? Because you're in a good mood. You're acting non-needy. You're operating from a place of abundance and you're feeling good. You're feeling confident. You're feeling capable. If you want to feel confident, capable, and in a good mood, then you need to make sure you are not allowing all of the aspects of life and your view of those events in life to push you into the opposite direction. So let's get into this here. Another classic example, it's my favorite one because it affects basically everyone, certainly everyone in America, if you're because you have so much driving here, is thinking about this idea of, if I am cut off in traffic, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? So let's talk about it. Let's say I'm cut off in traffic, and then the person who cuts me off then flips me off when I honk my horn as I'm slamming on the brakes. I honk my horn because I was nervous. Maybe my son is in the back seat and I'm worried that they don't see me, or just maybe I'm feeling angry all of a sudden because my adrenaline spikes, right? The idea here is they cut me off, they do the bad act, I honk my horn in a reflexive approach, and then that driver flips me off. If that is the case, what do most people do? Oh my gosh, I'm furious. I'm outraged. I flip them off. Maybe I drive angrily at them. I got to get beside them so they can see me flip them off. Like, you start screaming out the window. You drive more dangerously yourself. We all know this inherently. Here's an idea of the impression is that you were wrong when they put you in danger and then flipped you off. That's the idea. I was put in danger and then insulted and spat on as I got put in danger. And so therefore, I now have to react in a escalating or equally angry way that puts everyone at risk. What then happens is that people do things they regret, and there are consequences for things that people do that they regret. So instead, you can stop and think, okay, was I actually harmed? Did we get in an accident? No, I was able to stop and slam on the brakes enough so that no one was hurt. Did the flipping off of me by this random person actually cause me harm? No, I will never see this person again. I don't care about them. I don't respect them. I have no reason to feel insulted by their opinion. That's not actually based on me. They're just upset because they got called out because they acted incorrectly. It's a default reaction. It says more about them than about me. Do I think I will ever get cut off again? Will there ever be bad drivers ever again? Yeah, of course there will be. This exact event will likely happen many more times throughout my life as long as I am driving. What does that mean? It means my initial impression, which makes sense to be justified. My cortisol levels go up. If my son's in the back, I'm like extra sort of protective dad level. This is all a normal initial impression. I understand why I or anyone else would want to react that way. Now comes to the point of how to deal with that impression, to determine if I want to give assent to me actually being harmed. I wasn't in a crash. I don't care about their opinion, and it's not even about me. It says more about them than about me. And everyone's okay. And if I let myself get angry about this, now I'm actually putting the person in the back seat or myself or the vehicle or my day or whatever in far greater risk than if I just let it go and kept driving. Which means if I can choose to let it go and keep driving and not get angry, I've actually made the wiser choice because I was already put in a small amount of risk that I was able to manage and we did not crash. And so the right thing to do would be to let them drive away and not react, not get angry, not freak out, not start yelling, start shouting, start chasing, do any of those things or anything even worse, right? So I don't give assent to the impression that I was wronged because it does not serve me. It only has a risk to hinder me if I let that view determine following actions. Even if I don't change my actions, let's just say I'm just angry. Let's say I'm able to not chase, to not flip off, to not yell. I can contain the actions, but I just have the general impression that I was wronged. Now what happens? Now I'm angry. Now I'm furious. And do I carry that around with me for a little while, if not a longer while? Yeah, of course you do. That's what anger and rage does. The reason they call it road rage, the rage part blinds you to life around you. You're not able to act with rationality, with a calm head, with being considerate and careful. You do things you would regret. If I could prevent that regret before I ever even had to get to it. The best way to do that would be, in my mind, to not even let myself feel the negative emotion. So this all is all happening very quickly. Obviously, I just got cut off in this example and slammed on the wheel and got flipped off. And how do I deal with this? So now this is the approach when this happens. I have an impression, and start thinking about how you can apply this to other aspects of you dealing with impressions in your own life. And again, we will get to the sales aspects in a second. Stop in whatever you're doing. I don't mean slam on the brakes if you're driving, but theoretically stop. The first thing to do is stop in the flow of whatever you're doing that's giving you a reaction to this impression. Stop, examine the impression, strip it bare, break it down to its bare minimum components. The objective event in the cutoff in traffic is that one vehicle moved in front of another and someone else had to slow down. When someone gave the warning sign, again, in the way I'm describing this, I take myself out of the equation so it doesn't feel like I'm wrong. I'm just describing the objective event. The vehicle moved into another lane. The other vehicle had to slow down because they were surprised, pressed a horn, and then someone raised their finger up. That's the objective event. If I view this as I was wronged, I was hurt, I can then get angry. Do I actually want to get angry? Would it serve me driving right now to get angry? Or does it at least run the risk of hindering me? Does it run the risk of anything bad happening if I let this anger take hold? Even if I don't act on it, if I'm driving to work and I'm carrying that anger, how long am I going to let that anger be in my body? How long am I going to let it dictate my mood for that day? I can determine I don't want it to dictate more than 30 seconds at most, right? I can do that if I'm intentional with what I give assent to. If this impression that I was wronged, if I examine it and go, no, I really wasn't. I actually wasn't. The objective event just happened. One car drove in front of another one. Someone had to slow a vehicle down. A horn was pressed and a finger was raised. That's all that had to happen. That's how I view this impression. So it's like, stop, examine this impression, strip it bare, break it down to its components. And the sort of last step is usually also to view it from a cosmic perspective. That's a weird kind of thing to say on the podcast, but I'll give the example of what I mean. If I zoom out, it's like a view from above is how to think of it. Simply just zooming out from the consequence. The person who had the vehicle drive in front of them, it's me in this instance. Is this going to affect any aspect of my life if I don't get in an accident? This wronging, right? Will this person who's driving, it's me, will they lose their job just because someone cut in front of them? Will they stop making money? Will they stop being loved by their friends and family? Will they be homeless? Will any of these things happen? Which also, tell you, even those things happening, we can talk about how to view impressions on that and how to give assent to it or not. But will anything that I theoretically don't want to have happen, will anything else happen of this? Or is it just vehicles cutting in front of each other? And in the span of a life, let alone the span of a week, it means nothing. In the span of life, in the span of the world, in the span of the earth, does this mean anything? No, it's just one vehicle driving in front of another little blip out of the thousands of road rage potential road rage incidents that could be happening in my city on any given day. I don't need to get angry about this. It's just a vehicle driving in front of me. That's how to determine whether you want to give assent to an impression. Do I want to agree with my impression that I was wronged? It's not just, okay, how do I want to react here? It's way deeper than that, because you might even be able to withhold a reaction, but by internalizing the emotion, it will affect you over time. And that negative effect, will that help me or will it hinder me? Okay? This is how to think about this. And this practice, this helps us control our emotional responses and view things the way we want to see them. And we can turn potential conflicts into constructive conversations and learning opportunities. So we'll explore some real life examples here where changing our mindset can lead to better professional relationships in a way and better outcomes. Let's talk about how to think about this in a sales sense, into sales practices. Start integrating this idea into what you do as a sales professional. So, assent, what you agree to, influences all of my interactions and subtly changes the dynamic of my sales approaches. Like what I'm doing to try and sell stuff determines in this same idea. So let's talk a little bit about some examples, some real world examples of applications of this principle for salespeople. Let's get specific here. So first, let's talk about dealing with a rejection. Okay, let's say the event is a potential client decides not to proceed forward after hearing several pitches from you. Okay. Now this might seem like the end of the world. Maybe it was all this money, right? You're going to make this huge deal. You just put so much time and effort. You start spending the money. You start thinking about the vacation, thinking about the recognition, thinking about how great you would be, how you will have made it if you sold this one big deal, right? And you spent all this time, all this energy. You exerted so much effort into trying to close this deal over all this time. And they just decide not to proceed. And they don't even tell you the reason why. So to stop and examine it, pause, reflect on this rejection without immediately reacting emotionally. You can ask yourself, what can I learn from the situation? That's the key here. And for most of this stuff for sales, what can I learn from this? To strip the impression bare. Was the rejection, is this a reflection on you? Or is it a reflection on the client's, potential client's, priorities, budget constraints, something else with the company, rather than a personal failure? And you can evaluate the impression. Determine if that feeling of rejection, can this serve your growth or will it hinder your performance? If you view it as pure rejection that breaks you down, there's nothing to learn from, that would merely foster negativity. But if you think, hey, what could I have done differently to maybe spend less time on the deal if they didn't have the budget? Or if they weren't convinced because they went to a competitor, how could I have dealt with that sooner? How can I turn this thing that feels like the end of the world, I lost this massive deal that I spent all this time to? How can I extend out the time horizon to go, well, now I'm going to learn something from this. And what I learn might actually make me more money by saving me on the next deal. And if I didn't learn the lesson here and just got this amount of money, maybe I would lose out on a bigger deal in the future. And what's key here is I can determine my reaction to the event by examining whether or not I want to agree with my initial impression. Do I want to give assent to it? Where is the value in this? And if I extend out the time horizon, almost any possible challenge in a sales role theoretically could be for the best, which means I can view it as a good thing instead of a bad thing. This is how I started doing this in my own life. Side note here from the other examples I have planned. This is how I started doing it in my own life. I started thinking, how many times in my life was I going to let an event that happened to me that I thought was the end of the world? I got fired, I got rejected, I got turned down, I had to move, I had to adjust, I had to change, I lost this, I lost that. How many times was I going to let this thing tear me up until inevitably I could look back on my life? Maybe it takes 5 to 10 years after, but realize farther down the line that the event was actually for the best. That person breaking up with me, oh my gosh, it wasn't meant to be, and now I can find someone else. That job that never hired me, oh my gosh, that was the wrong company. The job that fired me, things were going to finally tailspin and crash and burn. Now I get to save that challenge. How many times am I going to realize in my own life that what I thought was bad over a longer time horizon actually was for the best? And if I could examine it myself and choose to go, wait a second, why don't I just skip the 5 to 10 years it takes to realize it was for the best and just approach it as for the best right now? If I can just do that, I will be in a better mood and I will be able to sell more anyway. Because when you are in a good mood, you think more clearly, you deal with objections more easily, and you're able to present more value and give off non-neediness more effectively. So why don't I just embrace this ahead of time? And this was my approach and my introduction to this idea. So this has happened multiple times in my life. I guarantee you, if you look back on your own life, if you lived in any way, shape, or form, if you haven't been locked in a small white room, chances are an event in your life that you thought was the end of the world, having to change schools as a kid, getting a bad grade, whatever it is, something that turned out to not be a big deal over a longer time horizon. In fact, not only was it not a big deal, it was actually the best thing for you at that time. How many times are you going to let that have happen to you before you can go, why don't I just skip the feeling negative about the thing ahead of time and fast forward to being in a more optimal mood about this event? So this is how to think about this. That's a longer time horizon approach to this idea, but it applies also to what we do in sales. So back to the example I'm giving. Recognize that each rejection is an opportunity to refine your approach. We learn in the failure. We learn in the mess ups, not from the successes. And assent to the view that this experience is now a stepping stone for getting better, for tailoring future pitches and wasting less time, it improves your resilience. That's how to think about this. Another example we could talk about is, let's say you're going through a sales slump, okay? So the event here is you're going through a period where you can't hit sales targets. They're just consistently not getting met. So to stop and examine it, take a moment and assess your sales strategy and your personal efforts objectively. Is there something in your approach that could be adjusted? Strip bare the impression. Analyze if there are external factors or internal strategies that are contributing to your slump. Is there something you can do? So are you not getting enough sleep? Are you not eating well enough? Are you not prioritizing yourself? Separate facts from just feelings of self-doubt and then evaluate the impression. Consider whether this slump's negative impact on your self-esteem is beneficial for you. And it usually isn't, because it can lead to demotivation, and that's a spiral to burnout. Then you can give assent to an alternative view. Choose to see this slump as a crucial indicator that it's time to grow. Perhaps it's a time to innovate, to seek training in new areas, to eat better, to move your body, to enhance your sales tactics. View it that way. This thing that feels like it should be the end of the world because, oh my gosh, I thought I was good at sales and now I'm not. I'm in a slump. Poor me. No, this is you receiving the message from the objective metrics of the market that you need to improve. Thank you for the message. Now let me figure out what I can do to improve. It doesn't have to be poor me, my self-esteem is crushed. It's going, oh my gosh, by this thing not working out over however long I was in this slump, I can now view this as a chance to go, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss out on bigger deals in the future. The message is received. Let me get better now. And I promise you, if you actually act on that, if you do get better, you will look back a year, 2 years time and go, oh my gosh, taking the action on doing that was the greatest thing I could have done because I made all this other money here. I avoided this challenge there. I got life better in this way. You can do all of that if you view the challenge as a signal for growth. And that's how I would want to view a sales slump. Another situation that comes up for so many salespeople. Let's say you're getting criticism from a manager or like a mentor if you're a solopreneur in some way, shape, or form. The objective event, is you received feedback that's critical of your sales techniques or the results you're getting, right? That's the objective event. There was a judgment on your results or your techniques. So this could make you feel, maybe your ego's hurt. Maybe you thought this person was your friend, or you thought you were better than you were. And now how am I supposed to deal with this? Stop and examine. Before responding defensively, pause, fully process this feedback and the intentions behind it. Strip bare this impression. Distinguish between constructive criticism that's aimed at helping you grow and criticism that may feel personal, but actually isn't. Right? Is my manager trying to help me, or are they trying to hurt me? And evaluate the impression. Reflect whether getting defensive or upset, will this help your growth? It probably won't. Or can that cloud your ability to learn from this feedback? And you can give assent to an alternative view. Embrace feedback as valuable insights to help drive your professional development forward. See it as a gift that you have a manager who's trying to help your skills, that you have a mentor who is critical of a thing, not a setback. This is how to deal with this type of thing, okay? Think about this criticism from your manager as not an assault on you personally, not a judgment on you as an individual, not a sign that you should have been hired in the first place and I guess I'm no good and what does he know? He hasn't sold in years. Instead of any of that, go, oh, what can I learn from this? I can choose to feel like this criticism is actually something I can use. And maybe And here's the truth. Maybe your manager has no idea what they're talking about. Maybe they're completely wrong. The thing they brought up is not the issue at all. Here's the point. By them bringing up any issue, it makes you examine it. So maybe you'll find what the real issue is. You'll find what you could be doing differently. And your manager happened to be wrong. But by them addressing some challenge in your results, you can then view that as a gift for you to start analyzing what you can do differently so that you can get better results. You have power over your mind. You can determine whether the event that feels like you were so terribly wronged is actually for the good. What do you want to give assent to? Okay. Let's talk about another example. Say unexpected market changes. This could be a change in interest rates. This could be something where there's a new patent out, depending on your service. There could be new challenges for your product or something. There's always aspects where something changes in the market that affects the demand, that affects the budget of your clientele or the ability for you to execute. This feels like the end of the world, right? That's how we approach this. Like, oh, it's so unfair. I was doing so well, and a thing that's totally unrelated to me came about, and now I'm not selling as well. Now I'm making less money. Now I'm providing less money for my family. It's hard to keep food on the table because something unrelated to me happened in the market. How unfair, poor me. Or there's another way to think about it. So stop and examine. Analyze these changes without panic, without poor me. What new needs or opportunities could these changes be introducing? Strip bare the impression. Isolate the actual changes from your fear about the implications. Does a change in interest rates actually change a lot, or is it just a fear because of what's going on? Are there new competitors, technologies, consumer behaviors, right? Actually examine what's really going on and then evaluate your impression. Determine if having a negative view about the market, such as fearing change, will serve your long-term success. Probably doesn't, because it will prevent adaptation. Then give assent to an alternative view. Adapt to embrace changes. These are opportunities to innovate, to lead in your market, to become the salesperson you always wanted to be. The idea that market evolution and the chance to differentiate yourself and your product in all these scenarios is somehow bad, rather than a chance to pause and celebrate, to analyze the situation rationally and strip away those initial emotional reactions, and then consciously choose a perspective that aligns with your personal growth and professional resilience. The idea that that's some radical idea, it's just crazy. This is an age-old wisdom that you can adapt. You can build the foundation for success and satisfaction in your sales career by continually thinking about how you can get better and thinking about your approach to an impression as whether it serves you or it hinders you. Okay. I gave examples about rain on your wedding day, someone cutting you off in traffic, multiple examples that probably happening all the time for multiple salespeople listening to this call or listening to this training podcast. I forgot what I was doing for a second, right? This is the idea here. So if you just stop a second and go, does my feeling about this event, does it serve me or does it hinder me? And if it hinders me, can I choose an alternate view to it? Is one of the greatest hacks to staying in a good mood and being more effective professionally. And it changes every aspect of your life. It's not just, all right, this objection or this failed sale or this prospect who lied to me is now no longer a big deal. It's all those other aspects of what happens to you in life, of what seems like events that should be tearing you down, maybe something that everyone views usually as a objective bad, like a health challenge, right? Maybe this health challenge is something that we need to deal with. And I can talk personally about my own approach. Like I got a health scare from a doctor years ago now. What was it, 2019, 2018? When I went through this, it was just like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to adapt to this? This is awful. Poor me. I got to change the way I eat. I got to change the way I exercise. That bad news was one of the best things that could have happened to me because it forced change in me. It forced me to adapt. And if I can view the moment I have that impression that this wasn't something that's poor me, this isn't some event that now I now I'm going to have to suffer. Now I don't get to eat this. Now I don't get to do that. Instead, I go, oh, good news. I can now make adjustments. I can determine whether I want this to be something that's a bad thing or a good thing. The ability to do that is unbelievable. So implementing this doesn't happen overnight. Okay. And this might be the first time some of you have ever even heard of this idea. Or maybe you've heard about it, you've thought about it. But if you really embrace this way of thinking, it's incredible what you're capable of. So it requires continuous practice, and it's a journey. It's a path towards this. So think about, there's one of my favorite quotes from Marcus Aurelius that started me on this path myself, was the insight from this quote, which is that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This hits on a key concept of embracing this mindset. The obstacle, the thing that feels terrible, is actually the way forward. It is the path to what I want to do. Okay? This is how to think about this. This thing that is hitting me in the chest, that's cutting me off of the knees, all these challenges, all these circumstances. How am I supposed to overcome this rejection? How am I supposed to deal with this setback at work? How am I supposed to deal with this health challenge? How am I supposed to deal with this death in the family? All these aspects that by any obvious societal view are objectively bad. If I can stop and determine what I can learn from this, how I can grow, how I can change, how I can use this to my advantage, and I can do that immediately instead of waiting 5 to 10 years to realizing later that it was for the best, I have now unlocked a superpower. I am invincible. I have real resiliency because I can time travel into the wisdom that I would have gained after a decade after the event and take it on immediately. And I can then be more effective in the moment. And then what happens when you can do that is that if you can fast forward your wisdom by essentially time traveling and pulling it into the present instead of waiting a decade, your life then a decade from now looks way different. I would argue way better, way more abundance, way more success, way more happiness, way more joy, way more contentment if I can fast forward that wisdom into the now, because that builds. There's an incremental approach that then gets exponential in the quality of your life if you can start applying this. So it requires persistent practice. It doesn't happen overnight to determine if you want to give assent to an impression. But refining it appropriately to determine your response to a challenge, to turn a setback into opportunity is just a great, if I could just give you this gift, the person listening to this podcast or watching this on YouTube, wherever you're enjoying this fine podcast, if I could just give you this, the change in your life, because it has been for me, has been unbelievable. And it requires constant work. I've been asked when talking about this with some of the people I've trained, I was talking with a client, if this gets easier to do over time. And the answer might be slightly unsatisfying because it's a yes and a no. So it will get easier to apply this concept to what you've already been applying it to. Meaning if it's rejection at work or whatever, something like that, and you're doing it there, yeah, that will get easier. But it will get more difficult over time to start applying this to more traditional and meaningful bad circumstances. So, the death of a loved one, how am I ever supposed to view this as a positive? Well, it's never going to be easy, right? That will never be easy. But there's ways, again, this is way down the line. There's ways you can apply this to even something like that. Okay? Even something that, of course, should be an objectively terrible event. Did I think this person was mortal? Or can I be grateful for the time I did have and that they lived as long as they did, or that they had a quality of life, or we had the memories we did? Is there something that now, this thing that feels objectively bad, I can then use to change my own life, to grow from this, to realize my time is short and reach out to the other people, to take action on this other thing, this objective bad action, this event that happened in life? Can I choose to view this as a time to appreciate what time I have left? So yes, it gets easier on dealing with, we don't have the budget right now. But what happens is, because you often start implementing this in ways that you can't believe how much happier and more fulfilled your life is by applying it to the small stuff, then turning it into the bigger things gets harder. And you start doing that because you saw the value in doing it in such short-term stuff anyway. That's the idea here. So to wrap up, choosing what you want to give assent to, this is just more than just a technique. This is a approach to the impressions that come to us in life. And it can free us from the view in each moment to determine if our perception is helping us or it is hindering us. This philosophy, this doesn't just enhance our sales performance. It enriches our entire life experience. It will take time and it will take practice. This is absolutely doable. So I will repeat this quote from Marcus Aurelius from Meditations, where in that book, by the way, he's just writing to himself. He's talking to himself. He is reminding himself of this truth. If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now. I'm Ian Ross. This has been the Close More Sales Podcast.